A black boy shines shoes for people, while secretly eavesdropping on business secrets. He intentionally polishes meticulously, so that white people can chat more, and he chooses his shoe shining spot at the bank entrance. As soon as the customers leave, he immediately takes out a small notebook and records all the money-making ideas. Compared to the meager income, these nuggets of knowledge are clearly more valuable. He eavesdrops on conversations of real estate agents, taking diligent notes. In an era where black people face discrimination, he aspires to earn money using white people's methods. But when he tells his father about his idea, instead of praise, his father becomes fearful. The thought of his son having such an idea will undoubtedly lead to him being hanged from a tree.
Negro man can't earn money with this. White man won't let him, no matter how good at it you are.
But the boy remains undeterred. He firmly believes that if he changes his surroundings, he can earn money like white people do. 20 years later, Bird comes to Los Angeles with his wife and children. In the big city, racial discrimination has slightly eased. He proposes to his wife's family that he wants to invest in real estate, but all he receives in return is merciless mockery, living under someone else's roof while enduring gossip. This shabby shack fills Bird with bitterness. He promises his wife that he will take her away from here and get a big house of their own. Bird walks the streets, searching for suitable properties. He discovers that the black neighborhood is overcrowded, with a housing shortage, while just a wall away, the white neighborhood has many vacant properties, and even at lower prices. He sets his sights on an apartment building. The seller asks for $40,000 upfront, but Bird can only come up with $30,000. He negotiates the price down to $35,000, but still cannot afford it. In order to secure the apartment, he presents his own plan. Currently only half of the building is occupied. If he does some renovations, he can attract more tenants and use the rental income to pay off the remaining balance. Although the landlord admires his intelligence, they are still reluctant to take the risk. Bird looks at the calendar. Suddenly an idea strikes him. The calendar was a gift from a bank manager. He goes to the bank to have a conversation with the manager, but the receptionist, seeing that he is black, becomes impatient, claiming that the manager is not available, even though they are right behind. Even when Bird sees through the deception, they still arrogantly drive him away. With no other option, Bird waits outside. Finally he catches the manager, and immediately applies for a loan.
Now, this deal would benefit Mr. Barker.
But even after using all his tactics, he was still rejected by the bank. On that same evening, the landlord suddenly called.
Did you use my name to try and get a loan from Mr. Reed at Mid-City Bank?
Bird didn't shy away. He openly admitted it, but to his surprise, the landlord voluntarily withdrew, agreeing to help him with the loan. In the landlord's eyes, Bird knew his chances were slim, yet he persisted stubbornly, trying every possible way to make the deal happen, showing his unwavering confidence in his investment. With the help of this loan, Bird finally secured the apartment, but the harassment from the police brought him constant trouble. A white elderly lady had just returned home, and was startled by the black man at her doorstep. She was furious, accusing the black man of stealing. The black man remained calm, explaining that he was just renovating the apartment. The old lady was furious and demanded they leave, but the black man asserted that he was the owner of the building. This further angered the old lady. How dare this black man, while she a distinguished white woman, was still renting a house.
You can't own this place.
Soon the police arrived at their door. They couldn't believe that the owner of the building was a black man, but Bird remained unusually calm. He directly pulled out the documents. Having faced doubts numerous times before, he always kept the documents with him. The police studied them for a while, but couldn't find any flaws. They could only leave with some harsh words, without looking back. That night Bird returned to the apartment, only to be scolded by the old lady. She forbade him from entering after 6 p.m.
A contractor can't be here after 6 p.m., Miss Cooper. I'm a resident. I'm moving in.
The next morning, the old lady moved out. She couldn't bear to live with a black person, given her noble bloodline, but as soon as she left, another black person moved in. The originally half-occupied apartment quickly filled up with tenants. Bird kept his promise, and repaid the owed amount to the landlord in full. The landlord couldn't help but admire his abilities, knowing that as a black person, it's incredibly challenging to succeed in one's career. So he proposed a partnership, with Bird handling the phone operations, while he would take care of the execution. They quickly reached an agreement, splitting the profits 50-50. Their careers quickly took off, and the two of them earned a good amount of money. However, their good fortune didn't last long. Just as Bird was showcasing his skills, the landlord suddenly passed away. But his wife was a staunch racist, looking down upon Bird. She wanted to take away Bird's assets and shares, at an extremely low price, not much different from robbery. Naturally, Bird couldn't agree, but his name wasn't on the contract, and the court wouldn't believe a black man. To protect his assets, he had to find someone who could prove that he had a working relationship with the landlord. Bird immediately thought of the bank manager, but the manager had already colluded with the woman, and refused to meet with Bird. He became angry and turned to leave, but as he walked into the bank's lobby, he suddenly realized something. The only difference between himself and these successful individuals was the color of his skin. Yet this one reason made it difficult for him to make any progress. Despite having assets of his own, he was always treated as inferior. Looking at the signboard of the building, Bird had an idea. He wanted to acquire the entire building. Although it was a grand dream, he simply didn't have enough funds. There was no other way but to find a partner. After much thought, he approached Tony, a friend of his wife's who happened to be wealthy. Tony was the wealthiest black man, yet he faced discrimination from white people because of his skin color. Bird told him that he wanted to purchase the tallest building in Los Angeles. Tony was astonished, never expecting a black man to speak so boldly, but Bird was determined to succeed. Inside this building, there are a total of 4 banks. If they acquire the building, all the banks inside will serve them, no longer daring to discriminate against black people and refusing them entry. Hearing his ambitious words, Tony was deeply moved, but ultimately, they were both black, and those self-righteous white businessmen would never meet with them, let alone do business with them. They needed a spokesperson. Upon hearing this, Bird already had someone in mind. He approached his friend Chris and asked him to act as their frontman. Chris was happy to help, but his business skills fell far short of the requirements. However, to Bird, it wasn't a problem at all. He personally taught Chris the necessary knowledge, while Tony advised him on how to interact with the upper class, and Bird's wife taught him some white etiquette. Soon Chris made progress, and after a series of transformations, he actually became presentable. With Tony's introduction, they finally met the owner of the building to negotiate with those arrogant white people. No matter how much the owners inflated the prices, Chris could always expose their tricks in advance with the data, even leaving their calculators in the dust. The owners knew they were up against a master, so they dropped their disguises and offered the most honest price. The building, initially priced at $2.5 million, was easily secured by Bird for $1.5 million. When he reappeared, the bank executives no longer dared to look down on him, but warmly greeted him. As expected, the loan process went smoothly. With the funds injected, Bird's real estate business grew rapidly. Wealthy black individuals could finally live in decent houses, daring to move into the city center and become neighbors with white people. Bird and Tony teamed up to acquire 172 properties, building a growing commercial empire. Even the vice president granted them a special audience. But Bird's ambitions didn't stop there. He couldn't forget the humiliation he experienced in his hometown, where racial discrimination was at its worst in Texas. Even Tony was tempted to give up, but Bird was determined to succeed. He had Chris leading the way, while he and Tony operated behind the scenes. After successfully acquiring the local bank, they broke barriers by providing loans to black people, enabling them to develop their own businesses with the capital. Although the lives of black people made significant progress, Bird and his companions became targets. The former bank president discovered through investigation that the entire bank was being controlled by 2 black individuals. He was infuriated, feeling deeply insulted. So, he made a phone call to report them to the government. Once white people discover the truth, Bird and Tony's careers will be completely destroyed by them. Regulatory authorities conduct inspections, and several bad loans are uncovered. They use business risks as an excuse to shut down all bank operations. Bird and Tony are accused of commercial fraud. In the courtroom, whether judges or juries, are all superior white individuals. They accuse Bird of taking white people's money to benefit black people, as if declaring that all worldly possessions belong to white people, and black people don't deserve to exist. Bird can no longer tolerate it. He shakes the clothes in his hand and stands up suddenly. Without loans, he can't buy a house, can't start a business, and can't possess wealth.
Sergeant at Arms, remove the witness.
Why is it so important to you to exclude an entire race of people from the American dream?
Although he is filled with dissatisfaction, he ultimately can't change anything. In the end, he and Tony are sentenced to 3 years in prison. All the land and properties under their names are confiscated. When Bird is released from prison, he has lost most of his assets, but he doesn't lose heart. Instead, he is full of confidence. They return to Texas to continue their real estate business, contributing their efforts to the rightful rights of black people. Through relentless efforts, Congress finally passes a bill to prohibit any racial discrimination in housing rentals and sales. Bird transforms from a businessman to a politician, using his own efforts to fight for equal rights for his compatriots, regardless of race or status. As long as they have a sense of justice, they deserve to be respected.